Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Can I ask you to take a seat, please? It's these college officers sort of at the back. They don't take instruction very easily. Welcome, everyone. I'm Richard Fortree. I'm the president of the Royal College of GPs, and it's my privilege and honour to welcome you to this William Pickles Lecture. The lecture is given every year to celebrate the achievements of an RCGP member in the field of medical education. This year we are really pleased to award the honour to Professor Sanjiv Ahluwalia. He's hiding in the corner, sort of, over there. Sanjiv graduated from the University of London Medical Schools of Guy's and St Thomas in 1994. He completed his vocational training as a GP at the Royal Free Hospital and Barnet Vocational Training Scheme in 2000, and he has worked as a GP in Barnet since 1999 and continues to do so today. Sanjiv has been involved in clinical education since the early 2000s. He started as a GP training programme director and latterly with the regional postgraduate dean for London. He's currently the head of School of Medicine at Anglia Ruskin University in Chelmsford and Professor of Primary Care and Medical Education. His work has consisted of managing undergraduate and postgraduate medical education work and has consisted of the programmes supporting educational transformation with service providers, developing interprofessional education. His research explores the relationship between clinical education and patient care outcomes. It is therefore with great pleasure that I invite Sanjiv to give the lecture tonight for the 2025 William Pickles Lecture and to present him with this medal. Sanjiv.
I am very grateful to you for this. Mr. President, members and fellows of the college, family and friends, I'm deeply honoured today to be talking to you at the college which has been my professional home for the last 25 years. I'm also very delighted and very grateful to see so many colleagues and friends, both past and present, here today. And really, I want to start by paying a special tribute to all of you, because none of my work, and certainly none of its impact, could have been possible without your support, your wisdom, your friendship, or your camaraderie. And I think you know who you are. There are trainees here who've become GPs who are providing fantastic care. There are colleagues who are spurring me on, and there are others who have been my inspiration in life. But I also want to pay tribute to a small number of colleagues who are not with us anymore, and whose influence on my thinking and my journey has been profound and enduring. From the left of the screen is Professor Mark Ashworth, who passed away late last year, and with whom I worked over a decade to prove the relationship between GP education and better patient outcomes. Moving along that line is Professor Elizabeth Murray, who was Professor of Primary Care at University College London, and with whom I worked for many years, and she taught me pretty much everything I know about research. Further along is Dr. Gerald Michael. Many of you who are in this room will remember him as my GP trainer, and who basically taught me clinical medicine as it should be practiced, give or take. And then at the furthest right is is Professor Kieran Sweeney, who was Professor of Primary Care at Plymouth University, an inspirational leader, and he particularly imbued in me a fascination for the impact of complexity science and what it means to primary care, and from whom I've taken a lot of inspiration. I'm going to do a little bit of belonging and what it means to me, but just a bit of audience participation. Does anyone recognize the photograph on the top left? Did you say finest? That's debatable, but I'll agree with you. Do you want to, which one was it? GKT. Thank you very much. Yes, absolutely. And on the right, does anyone recognize the building on the right? The Royal Free. Thank you very much indeed. So my journey, and Richard has already done this for me, so I feel like I'm repeating myself, but thank you. Started at the Medical and Dental Schools of Guy's and St Thomas's in the late 1980s. I then trained to become a GP. I did my hospital jobs, as they were known in those days, at the Royal Free Hospital in Hampstead, before moving to the GP vocational training scheme in Barnet. And I'm absolutely delighted that Jill Parsons is here today. She used to be one of my vocational training scheme program directors, and it's just a joy. There you are, thank you very much. And it's a joy to have you here, because things come full circle, don't they? But I also then went on to do my registrar year in this building on the left, which is the Watling Medical Centre in Stanmore, where I spent both a very happy and challenging year learning to grow up. And then on the right, where I currently practice, is my practice in Barnet in Finchley, the Wentworth Medical Practice. And I am so sorry that my partners can't be here today, but they would be delighted to have joined this conversation. But I also want to say to you that GP training wasn't just a sort of journey that I went through. It actually saved my career. And I really want to focus on the fact that it actually saved my career, and I'll tell you why as I go through it. Part of it is the relationships and the values that I encountered, rich in diversity, mentorship, and continuity. And I have to say that I'm still a GP in Barnet, and that continuity has really shaped my 25-year journey. But alongside clinical practice, I've also spent much of my life in healthcare education. I started out in GP training, went on to do a whole load of work in workforce development and curriculum design, before ending up as dean or head of school of Anglia Ruskin University Medical School in Chelmsford. And I have to say that the one question that has guided me for 25 years has been, how do we help people not to just learn, but also to truly belong? And that's been a guiding principle in the work that I've done. I've learned in both general practice and in education that real change only happens in relationships. And I will speak more about relationships through the course of this discussion, this lecture, but it is important to focus in on what relationships matter, and they have mattered immensely to me. One of the most powerful and often, I think, overlooked dimensions in relationships is the issue of belonging. So what I want to do today is to cover a few things with you. The first is, what do we really mean by belonging, and why does it matter? Second, how do we ensure that belonging is built and sometimes broken in GP education? And third, what can we do to protect and strengthen it into the future? So what do we mean by belonging? Well, it's a simple word, isn't it? One that has significant resonance for medical education, I think. Brené Brown says, a deep sense of love and belonging in an otherwise irreducible need of all people. Maya Angelou reminds us, the ache for home lives in all of us, the safe space where we can go as we are and not be questioned. For me, it is the foundation of our identity as professionals. It speaks to whether we feel seen, valued, and safe enough to learn and to grow. Belonging isn't just a warm feeling. It affects performance, motivation, mental health, and our decisions about whether to stay in a profession or not. GMC reports have shown us that discrimination, unhealthy cultures, and lack of support damage morale and progression. So I want us to start thinking about belonging as not a nice to have, but actually as a core organizing principle in medical education. And we can take inspiration from William Pickles, the college's first president, who lived out the values of continuity, attentiveness, and trust, embodying belonging at the heart of practice. So what does research tell us about belonging? Interestingly, actually, most of the research about belonging comes from outside of general practice education. In higher education, belonging improves motivation to study, it improves academic achievement and retention, particularly for students from underrepresented backgrounds. In healthcare education, particularly nursing education, belonging plays an equally pivotal role. It helps form professional identity, especially during those uncertain early stages when learners are not yet confident in their skills or their place in the system. But belonging isn't a one-time event. It is dynamic. It is built and rebuilt over time, but it is also built and rebuilt across academic, social, personal, and physical spaces as well. I just want to turn to general practice as a place of belonging. And this is where I think GP education really shines. If you think about the GP registrar, think about the GPs here who were once registrars, spending a full year with a team, seeing the same patient group, learning informally in corridors, and being asked, what did you think of that case? What did you think of being in that situation? How are you feeling? Those fundamental questions that we ask of our GP trainees, how much they matter to the development of a sense of belonging. And that kind of relational learning builds confidence, identity, and most importantly, connection. So, at their best, GP educational systems are highly relational. If you think about our forefathers and mothers who set up GP training with the vocational training peer learning groups, structured mentorship by experienced GPs, buddying systems, informal support networks, the first 5 RCGP program, longitudinal clerkships, enhancing continuity, and practice-based learning, developing team-based integration. These aren't just educational tools, they are belonging environments. And trainees often describe this shift that takes place over a period of time. I am becoming one of them. Really important, really, really important. But there is also another side to this story. And that is about competency-based assessments. We have workplace-based assessments, the AKT, the MSF, e-portfolio and sign-offs, the integration of GP trainees into hospitals being limited, and ARCP review panels. I'm so glad I don't do any of those anymore. These are necessary to assure the public about the competence of our GP trainees, but when overemphasized, and I think we're in danger of doing that, they reduce human development to a checklist. And that, I fear, is what we are facing. I'd like to quote Professor Ron Barnett, who used to be Professor of Education at the Institute of Education, just down the road from here. Amid these processes, the language of professionalism changes from a language of trust, integrity, commitment, and loyalty to one of efficiency, performance indicators, standards, being adaptable, and managing in a smart fashion. Professionalism, we may say, is witnessing a lurch from an ethic of service to an ethic of performance. And we can feel that lurch, can't we? Yeah, I think we can feel that lurch. And I don't think this audience in particular needs reminding that our profession has been under extraordinary pressure over the last decade. Resident doctors have undertaken industrial action twice in under a decade. And if we think back before that, the last time we saw industrial action was in the late 1970s. So we are really seeing the pressure being piled upon our junior doctors. These junior doctors are actually our future GPs, and they are making something very clear. They don't want necessarily just better pay. They want better belonging. They want respect. They want support and dignity. Industrial action, in my view, has been framed as a pay dispute, but underneath it, it is also about belonging, or should I say more accurately, the loss of it. And the pressures are showing elsewhere as well. The proportion of colleagues who are transitioning from foundation training into higher training has seen a worrying downward trend for the last decade. In 2011, around 75% of all foundation doctors progressed directly into specialty training. By 2022, this has dropped to about 25%. A significant proportion are now either leaving medicine altogether or stepping sideways into non-training roles. This tells us something. It tells us that traditional career pathways no longer feel like home for many young doctors. They are not seeing a place where they feel they belong. And we need to hear that message very, very carefully. So what does promote belonging? From both the literature and our lived experience, key factors that emerge are a sense of purpose and dignity, knowing that one's work and learning really matters, autonomy and agency, being trusted and supported to make decisions, sometimes difficult decisions, social capital and value, feeling connected to peers and mentors, an inclusive culture, one where being in environments where difference is welcomed and actually valued. Identity formation, being helped to see yourself as a future GP, indeed being seen as a GP. Quality relationships, having people who know your name and care how you are doing, makes a big difference to sense of belonging. And at their heart, all of these factors ultimately talk to relational, not transactional approaches. And this is where I think general practice at its best still offers something really valuable. But the pressure on the system has a perversive effect and threatens to erode what I think has been built up over the last 40 years of GP education. So I just want to talk about trainers, GP trainers. Trainers are really feeling the strain at the present time. Over 50% of educational supervisors now report significant concern about their own risk of burnout and are feeling overwhelmed by workload pressures. When supervisors are burnt out, rushed and overwhelmed, they have less capacity for relational work. The real human work, I think, that fosters belonging. And when trainees sense that supervisors are struggling, it can make them much more hesitant to come forward, reach out, seek feedback, and show vulnerability. Showing vulnerability is so important to learning. And when trainees can't do that, then there are real risks to patient care. So it becomes a vicious cycle. Beyond GP education itself, there are some significant system pressures, I think, that are playing into this story. Bottlenecks in trainee progression. We've seen that there aren't enough training posts in core and higher training, but there are many, many trainees who are struggling to get jobs. We saw the issues around GPs, newly qualified GPs struggling to get jobs recently as well. That demonstrates that there are some significant bottlenecks in the way we are running our system. We've seen financial cuts to education budgets, worrying cuts to education budgets, and we've seen also policy churn in medical education with really short-term politics really overtaking long-term workforce planning and educational planning. Significant issues. The introduction of, an example of this is the introduction of the medical doctor apprenticeship designed to foster belonging, relationships, support for underrepresented groups, which has become the victim to policy churn, in my view. So the question for me is, how do we ensure that models of education and care remain relational, don't become fragmented, dispersed, or indeed overwhelmed by transactional elements? And in my view, I think this college has been a bastion and remains a very strong proponent of balancing transactional elements of education with relational views and delivery. But if we're not careful, belonging will become much harder to build in these new environments as we go forward. The issues around belonging are not limited to GP trainees and to GP trainers, or more broadly to HEIs and beyond. Think about our undergraduate, our international medical graduates. They face even greater challenges in relation to belonging. Navigating language and cultural differences. Learning in unfamiliar healthcare systems, and sometimes facing implicit biases or assumptions from peers and supervisors. Whilst many schemes are working hard to support IMGs, the effort required to catch up both socially and professionally can be exhausting. Belonging should not be harder for those who are already facing higher barriers, and yet too often it is. So, what are some of the challenges and tensions within GP education itself that may be threatening and fraying that relational fabric? I think continuity is under threat. Time for mentoring has been squeezed. Burnout in the GP workforce is rising. Administrative burdens are unbearable, and inclusion gaps persist. All around us, the culture shifts from relationships to transaction. So we find ourselves, I think, at a crossroads. We find ourselves at a nexus, and I do think that we do have an opportunity and we have the ability to make a difference. So in this section of the talk, I just want to reflect with you about what I think we can do to make belonging central to the design of GP education. The first is we need to design our programs with relationship at the center of everything we do. That means reasserting the value of continuity, not only in clinical care, but supervision, mentorship, and peer learning. Placements should offer sustained, meaningful contact, not just exposure. Fragmented training means fragmented identity, and we really must avoid that. We must recognize that educators are leaders of belonging. Educators need to be supported, not just as teachers, but as leaders of belonging. This means recognizing and rewarding relational and inclusive practices. Educators need space, tools, and time to build inclusive human learning environments. They need to believe that belonging matters. We need to embed inclusion into the structure of education. Inclusion must move from aspiration to infrastructure. This includes wraparound support, inclusive induction, and pathways for progression. Tackling differential attainment must involve changing cultures, not only assessment practices. We have to reimagine hospital rotations and non-practice placements as well. We have to work collaboratively to make GP trainees feel embedded during hospital rotations and community placements. Belonging cannot be assumed, it must be created intentionally. We should also measure belonging as part of educational quality, I believe, through narratives, through lived experience, and through structured surveys, so that belonging is no longer invisible, but becomes visible and clear. But we should also create learning communities, not just programs. Our goal should be to create learning communities that sustain identity, professional confidence, and connection beyond individual placements or rotations. So, as I come to the end of my talk, I want to make a plea to all of you. General practice has always been about more than medicine. It is about relationship, continuity, and care. As educators, we have the opportunity and the responsibility to pass that ethos on to the next generation. Not just through what we teach, but also through how we teach it and how we treat people in our care. Because ultimately, the people that benefit the most from this are the patients and the populations that we are responsible for. The future of general practice education will not be defined by the next policy tranche that comes our way. It will be defined by whether we, as a group of educators in the house of the Royal College of GPs, holds relational care and its practice and its education at our core. And whether we can make belonging not an exception, but the rule that guides what we do and how we do it. And that is my challenge to all of you. How can we make belonging central to absolutely everything we do? So thank you very much for listening to me, and thank you very much for challenging me if you want. I'm very open to any questions that anyone may have or any comments you would like to make. There's a mic floating around, Raj, so if you don't mind.
Thanks, yeah. In '95, when I got my job as a GP in Lambeth, I bought a house in the practice area. All the other GPs laughed at me and said, "What are you doing? You know, you'll be knocking your door." It's never ever happened. And feeling part of my, my village of Kennington, I feel like I work extra harder for them because I know that if I do anything wrong, they're going to knock on my door. Do you think more younger GPs should live in the practice area?
Thank you, Raj, for that question. I think we need to make it attractive for people to want to do that. I think people have to make a choice. It is their choice. But if we don't make belonging part of a community relevant and central and feasible, then it won't happen. That, I think, is the challenge that we face for the next generation.
Hi, I'm Anwar Khan, and one of the things we have is an aspiration to develop a medical school where students are based with GPs throughout their years of training and actually go out to secondary care for placements, because I think I want to train the future neurosurgeon that values primary care. What do you think about the role of deans like yourself in actually following a similar sort of model?
Thanks, Anwar. I don't think you need deans to tell you what to do. The reality is that the evidence is very clear. The more you centre education in primary care, the more likely patients are to benefit. One doesn't need to, the evidence speaks for itself. What you need is deans across the country to believe that and make it happen. Thank you. Gentleman over there.
Hi, I'm Sunil Barnott. Thank you, Sanjiv. That was excellent. I think the philosophical perspective of professional artistry versus technical rational, the approach of relationships and the technical transactional, I think that's pretty clear. I was just wondering, I know you've done a lot of work on training practices, the added value of training practices, but I was just wondering, what's the value of belonging in terms of patient care and patient outcomes?
So certainly some of the work that I've done demonstrates that actually the way we interact between trainers and trainees emulates or mirrors the way trainees and doctors then mirror their interactions with patients. And the fact that actually there is a difference in patient outcomes between training practices and non-training practices indicates the value of education in improving patient care. So for me, I think it's really important that we understand that belonging is a core part of that relational approach to education, and in turn has an impact upon patient outcomes. So if you think about your patients, how many times have I heard a patient say, my GP? How many times have I had a patient say, my practice nurse? Trainees say, my GP trainer. The language that we used to hear much more of is heard less today than it used to be, anecdotally. And I think we need to hold on to the fact that actually that sense of belonging and that sense of continuity has profound implications for patient care.
Hello, Professor Ahluwalia. How do you think the trajectory of your career would have been different if you had felt the same sense of belonging as a junior doctor yourself?
Oh, that's coming from my son, by the way. What I would say is that there are people in this room who, as a result of whom I am here today. I wouldn't have been a junior doctor if it wasn't for those people. And that talks to the power of GP education in creating a sense of belonging and psychological safety. That psychological safety that comes with being part of a community and being part of somewhere that anchors one is really important. And that is what makes for flourishing. My career has flourished because the people that really helped me care are sitting in this room. So that really is important. Thank you for asking me that very difficult question. I'm cutting your pocket money for next month.
I'll get you go first.
Hello. Thank you for a great lecture. It's just such a delight to have you speak here. So as you know, I'm Camilla Hawthorne. I'm chair of the RCGP, but I'm also a medical educationalist. And in my time at the medical school in Cardiff, one of the things I realised that when you have really large year groups, I suspect in Anglia Ruskin it's probably smaller, but having 300 students in a year group makes it really difficult to get that sense of belonging going, doesn't it? And we used to know the very best in the year and the very worst in the year, and the people in the middle just never really found role models, never really found people that they would want to be like. Yeah. So about 15 years ago, we set up a new curriculum in Cardiff, where we started dividing the students into small groups from year one and sending them out into the community every week. And I remember the first time we did it because it was just a completely new way of teaching for us. And it happened just after Christmas. And all through the Christmas holidays, I was emailing the first year students, reminding them that Wales is a wet country and you need wellies and you need rain gear and bring it all back with you after Christmas. Sounding a bit like their grannies, I think. And then my real fear was, as we sent them all out across South Wales on their placements, that 300 would go out and 299 would come back. And you know, it is a real effort, isn't it, with the sort of medical education we're trying to provide today, to do it well and to be able to actually give students the experiences they need and they deserve. Actually takes a huge amount of effort to get them all out of the actual ivory tower.
Thank you, Camilla. I think you make a really important point. My medical school, and I didn't talk much about Anglia Ruskin because this is a GP audience and I really wanted to come home to talk about my first passion, which is GP education. But you're absolutely right. We're a medical school with 123 entry points. So we're small, we're bijou, we can love our students, we can wrap around them. Animal, my deputy head of school, is sitting in the back over there. He is our champion for well-being. And you're absolutely right that balance between quality and quantity is a really difficult one to achieve. As numbers go up, the ability to really wrap around our individual students becomes more challenging. But it also, I think, is important to think a little bit about what does quality mean? What does the quality of experience really mean? Does it mean just getting good lectures, or does it also mean belonging, feeling like you're part of something that matters, something that adds real value to what you're doing? So I think it's a really important point, beautifully made. And I'm just delighted that we've got a chair of the college that can consider that in your deliberations with government and other bodies. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjiv. It's not a question, actually, it's a comment just to say that you really do practice what you preach in terms of giving us a sense of belonging. You are our programme director on the Barnet VTS, and I think it is a testament that a lot of us graduates ended up working in Barnet, becoming partners of our in practice in Barnet, becoming GP trainers in Barnet, and I really feel that sense of belonging in Barnet, belonging part of the VTS, belonging with a group of people. So I just wanted to make that comment that, you practice what you preach. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Karen. I shall never forget karaoke at Cumberland Lodge.
I think we've got time for maybe 2 more questions.
2 more questions. Yes, very happy to, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's the most inspirational lecture. Thinking about belonging and the way general practice functions nowadays, we're multidisciplinary teams. And I'm sure everyone in this room is of a like mind to you. We're all of the same tribe. We think in a very similar way. How do we draw in the other disciplines? How do we persuade them to our way of thinking?
Yeah.
Because they may not have been brought up in the same way. They might not have enjoyed the same excellent standards of education that people like you provide. How do we do it?
Thank you. I think this is a really important question, and actually I apologise that I haven't spoken enough about the other professional groups. My wife, she's sitting there, she's a practice nurse, and I've drawn a lot of inspiration from the other professions. They've taught me more about being a medic than from medicine itself. I think it's important that we acknowledge and recognise that care is a team sport, and its education is a team sport as well. And that means that actually we need to value and we need to treat equally the importance of education for a whole team. The way we learn as a team is very different to the way we learn as individuals as well. So there are educational processes that we need to be competent at as a team so that we can really make a difference to collective learning. But beyond that, there is a cultural piece as well here that really matters. And that is about understanding that when you're working as a team, it isn't always about the GP being the leader, that actually leadership is a shared endeavor and one where we value how the role of others, their expertise in improving patient care. If we can capture that ability and value other people and their learning in that way, then I think we will make for some fantastic teams and we will make for some fantastic learning opportunities for our registrars, but for others as well. I have to say that I think there are some significant challenges to team-based learning, not least of which is to do with capacity and capability. But setting those aside, I think the principle of team-based learning alongside really good relational pedagogy for GP registrars is really, really important. Final question.
Hi, I'm Titi Aladushu. I'm a first five, but I was an ACF in medical education. I've heard you speak before, and I just wanted to say thank you so much. This is wonderful. But also, I was reflecting, one, on the statistic that relational care and continuity of care with your GP, it reduces your morbidity and mortality in a dose-related effect.
Yeah.
I don't know any other specialty that can say I'm literally the drug that's making you better. But also, the fact that we've lost that, or we're losing that a lot in a lot of general practice, and that the education and training of a GP does not end at the end of VTS. It often continues, not just for first fives. And how do we strengthen that? Because I think Victoria, I don't know if she's in the room, was telling us at a presentation recently that nearly 1 in 3 GPs and after CCT don't do general practice. They're leaving the profession, and that number is going up and up. And I wonder how we embed belonging post-education, because as educators, we might know this, but what happens after UCCT? And how do we keep them in?
Yeah.
Because I need GPs when I grow old.
Yeah. And I need GPs now. You don't have to wait to grow old to need GPs. I think that all I can say is that my relationship with this college has changed significantly over the last 25 years. I was a bit of a firebrand and probably not someone who was a champion of the Royal College. And as I've grown older and I've seen how the Royal College has set up its approach to values, to standards, to creating spaces where coming together to learn, to work, and to be has really flourished and evolved over the last 15 years, in my view. I think that there is something for us to learn from that, that the importance of belonging comes from connectedness, from being connected to things that really matter to one. And using that connectedness, I still talk to the same people that I used to go to BTS with, as an example. So how do we use technology today to help us remain connected, as an example? How do we ensure that actually the human connections that we formed during our training flourish and flow into latter life? How do we make sure that actually the bread and butter stuff, the terms and conditions, all of that stuff continues to allow that flourishing, that engagement and that connectedness to continue? So that's what I'm referring to when I talk about belonging. We need to put belonging back in the center of everything that we're doing. And that it doesn't just matter in education, it also matters in the service side as well. How do we make sure that actually we're valuing continuity of care for our patients, but also continuity for our GPs? You know, what are the terms and conditions upon which we are employing them? Are they promoting a sense of connectedness and belonging? I'm not sure. I don't have an answer because I'm not that heavily involved on that side of things. But I certainly think that we probably could be doing better.
Sanjiv, on that point, I think we need to draw it to a close. But this isn't the end of the conversation. There is plenty of opportunity to discuss with yourselves, with Sanjiv and others, about this really important issue. Belonging is so central to the life of general practice, what we do in terms of continuity of care, but also at a time of huge change within our healthcare system. We need to keep reminding people of the importance and centrality of general practice and their teams, and the nature of general practice and continuity of care that is at the heart of good medical care, good health care, and good community cohesion as well. So I think you are really timely in your message. We know from what you've said that we can't assume this is the case. We have to work at it. It has to be intentionally created, and you've stimulated to do that. So thank you very much, Sanjiv. Thank you for being our William Pickles Lecturer of 2025. And please enjoy the evening's meals and refreshment and stay and have conversation with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can I take this?
Yes,
Thank you very much.